I bet 3 2s. 4 4s.
4 5s.
6 3s. 7 5s. 8 5s. 12 5s. 12 5s.
Man, they really do give you the briefest of explanations, so unless you've played the game before, you've got no hope of actually understanding what's going on. And I swear they do this shit on purpose. It's a classic movie trope they use when showing lesser known games. They either can't justify burning screen time to explain the rules, or the director just can't be bothered to get the camera angles right to show what's actually going on. Rather than giving us any context to what's happening, movies and TV shows prefer to show what's happening through the characters' reactions rather than the current state of the game. Like, they legitimately consulted with chess experts to formulate an intriguing position in an actual chess game, but what they show in the movies gives you zero context to what's happening, except for the fact that Ron needs to sacrifice himself for the greater good. It's frustrating to see, especially when you know that there was a set of legitimately clever moves Ron had to make. Well, at least with the depiction of Liar's Dice in Pirates of the Caribbean, they kind of show you the game they're playing, but they don't really explain the rules that well, and we're left assuming how the game ended up based on the dialogue. And that's where I come in to save the day. So, if you're someone looking to understand what the hell happened in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, or if you just like to learn about some lesser known games that might be fun, you've come to the right place.
I accept that.
This is a bit of this and that on 3 surprisingly fun games you didn't know about. Alright, here we go with the rules of Liar's Dice. Once you get this, the scene between Will and Mr. Davy Jones, or I'm going to call him DJ, will be hitting just that little bit harder. First off, this game can be played with pretty much any amount of friends, assuming you have enough dice. And in my personal experience, I would say the best is probably between 3 and 5 people in total, but you can totally have more. Everyone has a set amount of dice. I use 5 each because that's how many came with my set. And yes, I did buy a bunch of dice just to play this game. Totally worth it. They look sick. Loser of the last round goes first, or if it's your first time, take your pick. Play goes clockwise, with each person making a bet as to the total number of dice that have a given face value under each person's cup. For example, if I make a bet and say 7 3s, I'm betting that there will be 7 or more 3s after everyone reveals their dice. After you make your bet, it's the next player's turn, and they can do one of 2 things. 1. Increase the bet, or 2. Call you a liar.
You're a liar and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
If the next player chooses to increase their bet, they must either increase the face value of the dice, so instead of saying 7 3s, they can say 7 4s, or 5s, or 6s, because 4s, 5s, and 6s are bigger than 3. Or they can increase the number of dice that they are betting and choose any number, like 8 2s, or 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, etc. If they don't want to increase the bet, they can call you a liar, which ends the round. In this particular case, them calling you a liar means that they are saying that they don't think there are at least 7 3s on the board, and that really there's going to be 6 or less in total. Take a look at the board here. How many 3s do you see? I'll give you a second. If you said 5 3s, you'd be right, but you'd also be wrong. The more astute of you might have noticed that I never mentioned the possibility of someone betting on the face value of 1. That's because in the game of Liar's Dice, all 1s are wild. Meaning that while we have 5 3s on the board, we really have 8 3s in total because of the 3 wilds here. And that means that the person who just called you a liar was wrong, as there are actually 8 3s on the board. If, say, there was a total of only, 2 3s, you would be confirmed a liar and you'd lose that round. And that takes us to the next rule. If you lose a round, you lose a die. At the end of every round, someone is losing a die. If you lose all of your dice, you're out. The game continues until there's only 1 player remaining and they are crowned the winner. Not only is losing a die putting you 1 step closer to having to serve more years on DJ's ship, but it also gives you exponentially less power and information. Just imagine you only have 1 die left and you're up against a player with 5. You can try and be tricky and sneak a couple wins in, but the odds are really stacked against you. For what happened on the board here, you'll notice that our player 3 used to have 2 dice, but got 1 back and now has 3. This is because they called out exactly and got it right. Player 3 didn't feel confident in upping the bet, but he also didn't think that calling player 2 here a liar was the right move. So, instead, he called out exactly, and luckily enough, he got it bang on. You can call exactly with a full set of 5 dice, but just know you're not going to be getting anything extra for it. Unless you add a rule where you can steal dice, but I don't want to cause any arguments amongst you and your friends, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Well, that's pretty much it when it comes down to the base rule set. Pretty simple now that it's explained, right? Yep. So, a quick recap of the rules. Loser goes first. Play goes clockwise. You can either bet or call someone a liar, or call exactly if you're playing those rules. Each bet must increase the face value or total number of dice, or both. Ones are wild, and finally, you lose a die if you lose a round. The last player with any amount of dice wins the game. This next one is the simplest of the three, called dots and boxes. I used to play this against the computer as a kid on some random game I can't quite remember, but it's solid fun, easy to teach, and there's at least one trick that I can teach you to almost guarantee that you beat and frustrate whoever you're versing. So, the game is essentially a bunch of dots arranged in the grid. You can draw these yourself in whatever size or pattern you'd like, but I've printed off mine for the video. You can actually make this game in triangles, hexagons, pentagons, or any other tessellating pattern you'd like. Or maybe even do it in 3D. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to be sticking with the squares. Each person gets a turn at drawing a single line between two dots, not diagonally.
Diagonally.
Take your pick at who goes first. Not only do they get to draw a line, but they have to draw a line. This comes into play later. Now, you don't have to, but I suggest using two different colours to make the game a little more fun and easy to understand. Each person gets their turn until they completely surround a box. When this happens, that player gets a point. You can mark this by putting a symbol or your initial in the box. I'm going to fill it in completely because it's probably going to look better on video. And that player who just scored has to take another turn. Games will typically get to a point where there are no good places left to go, and you'll have to give up at least 1 point to your opponent. That's where it gets fun. You know that once they fill in the box, they're going to be forced to make another move. So maybe you decide to be extra crafty and give up 1 point so that they are forced to give you 3 or more. From my experience, this is typically the extent of people's thinking when playing this game. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret now that will win you almost every game and also really piss off your friends. Take a look at the example here. Your opponent has just given you the golden opportunity to take a chain of 12 points. Looks great, right? Except you know that the next chain that they have is worth 64. Not so great. So what do? Here's the trick. Take a few points, but just before the end, do this. Purposely avoid giving yourself any more points, forcing your opponent to have their turn, and no matter where they go, they lose. It's devious, and a great way to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And because 90% of games will end in a couple of big chains, you can turn the tides of almost every game you play. So, quick recap. Players take turns drawing a line. If you surround a space, you get a point and must take another turn. The winner is the one with the most points when the grid is completely full. Now, on to the last, most complicated of the three, but also my personal favourite. Ultimate Tic Tac Toe. I really wish I was shown this when I was younger so I got to play it a bit more, because it's genius. I'm going to assume that you all know how to play Tic Tac Toe, or noughts and crosses. But put simply, 3 in a row of your symbol and you win. It's a game that, if played perfectly, always ends in a tie. One thing you'll quickly realise is that the middle square is the most important, because there are 4 ways that you can win using the square. Corners, you can win in 3 ways, and sides, you can only win in 2. Now, Ultimate Tic Tac Toe adds a level of abstraction that completely changes the game into something so much more complex. If you take a look, you'll see that we have a total of 9 regular Tic Tac Toe boards that make up one giant 3x3 Tic Tac Toe board. The ultimate goal is to get 3 in a row on the giant board. And for this one, I would highly recommend using 2 different colours. The way that we do that is by getting 3 in a row in one of the smaller boards, 3 in a row on the giant board, and I win the game. If you're thinking that we just play 9 separate games of Tic Tac Toe and see what happens at the end of it, you're dead wrong. Every single move that you decide to make will directly influence where your opponent can go. Okay, someone goes first and they get to choose anywhere on the board they want to go. Now, when I say anywhere, I don't mean anywhere. Giving away the middle of an ultimate Tic Tac Toe board is just too crucial to be given away for free. So, in my experience, I ban the middle square. Anyway, let's assume you've chosen this as your first square. Now what? Well, as I said, every move you make directly influences your opponent's turn. So if you go into the middle square, that means your opponent then has to play within the middle square of the giant board, anywhere within here. Same goes for them. If they go here and it's your turn, you have to play here. This goes back and forth until we have a winner. But there is one small catch. If a segment has already been claimed by a player and you're supposed to play in that segment, you then get to choose anywhere on the board to play. This introduces even more complexity into your decision making. Here's a good example. I'm going to purposely go into this square here so that my opponent will get 3 in a row down here, which then gives me the opportunity to play in any square I want on the whole board, and I win the game. Quick recap. The first player can choose to fill a square anywhere on the board except for the very middle. Each player is sent to play somewhere on the corresponding segment to the previous player's turn. If a player is sent to a completed segment, they are free to play in any square on the board. The game ends when a player gets 3 in a row on the giant board. And there you have it. This has been a bit of this and that on 3 surprisingly fun games you didn't know about. Stay tuned for the next one.